joining our webinar. So today we're going to be touching on the role of heat and moisture in skin health in seating. I'll confess it's not something I know a lot about, but I'm looking forward to learning from this webinar. So my name's George Holbert. I'm the sales director here at Yorkshire Care Equipment. I've been with the company, we're a family-run business, been with the company 15 years. So just a little brief outline as to who we are and what we're about. So we're excited because next year is our 50th birthday, so calling for celebrations. But really our mission all along has been to enhance quality of life. So everything that we do, every piece of equipment that we supply or service that we give to an individual, it's enthusing really to knowing that you're enhancing somebody's quality of life. So we've dealt with a lot of healthcare professionals over the years and continue to do so. And a large amount of the business that we do, we carry out joint equipment assessments with professionals, OTs and physios and others. We've really built the business up as specialist seating suppliers. So we speak about specialist seating being our forte. That's where our expertise is. You'll see just a few sample of products on the screen there. So from an active user wheelchair to a specialist electric wheelchair or a specialist tilting space chair for maybe for a client who's hoisted. So we've got a lot of experience and we have a range of our own seating. So it's something that we really pride ourselves on and looking forward to developing further as we move on. We have our own in-house physiotherapist, Porrick, who some of you may know, and it's excellent really to have a physio viewpoint when undertaking the specialist seating assessments. So just before I hand over to our next speaker, just a real reminder, we've been running quite a few webinars now. Question now, have you watched our other webinars? So jump on our website, you'll see the links to them there. We've covered some more on specialist seating, one on the hip guard patient fall device. So there's a lot there to free resource really, just for you to go in, listen at a time convenient for yourself, and as we all love to learn more. So with that, I will hand over to our guest speaker, Faith Brown. Faith is from a company called Sunrise Medical, who many of you may know over many years. She's an occupational therapist. She's the clinical lead for Sunrise Medical in UK and Ireland, and also in charge of all their training. So a full-time, very much a full-time role. She assured us it's part-time because she's doing a master's degree as well. I'm not quite sure how you fit it all in, Faith, but well done. I will hand over to you now.
Thanks, George. I'll just take a moment and put my screen up. Bear with just a moment. Okay, so I still haven't quite got that to the Zoom level where I can talk and click share screen at the same time, but I think we've made it. So welcome to everybody. I see a couple of familiar names, so that's really exciting. So got quite a bit to cover, so without further ado, I'll get into it. Today's workshop is about microclimate and skin health, and then at the end I am going to just talk about one of our cushions that you might consider if you're really trying to get on top of some microclimate issues with your clients. And just 4 points to get through. First of all, just what is microclimate? It's one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot. And why do we care? And then what can we do about it, basically? And then I'll just talk very briefly about the JAY Balance Cryo at the end. Just wanted to say today, this is your session. I've come here for you, and Yorkshire Care has organised all of this for your benefit. So please don't be shy. Interaction is welcome. I fully appreciate what it's like to be on the other side of a Zoom course, as George was saying, having done my time with hundreds of hours in front of Zoom probably this year, maybe not hundreds. I'm sure I've hit 100 though, as a student. So don't feel shy. I really would I'd rather you say just something and give it a try. Everybody's probably thinking the same thing if you're not sure about something or want to contribute something. So without further ado, let's get into it. What is skin microclimate? And what's nice about this term, it's one of those terms in rehab that actually makes some kind of sense. I know a lot of you are extremely experienced and will know that, but we have probably some newer folks here on the line. And climate is a term we talk about every day. It's more or less weather, isn't it? The heat, the levels of water in the air, and micro, obviously being small. And microclimate is simply the climate of your skin under where your skin is touching the surface, typically in sitting or lying. So effectively, it's skin temperature and how much moisture is in the skin, and that is your microclimate. So very straightforward. I will just bring your attention to, at the bottom of the slides, you'll see some references. This is where I got this particular definition. It's not the only one for microclimate, it's such a commonly used term, but you will be sent at the end some resources, including a PDF of all the slides. So don't feel like you have to be writing that down or anything like that. So why does it matter, really? And I'll have to say, at one point when I was a newer therapist, I kind of thought, well, I get it if somebody's really hot and sweaty, and obviously in skin folds, you can get fungal buildup and worries about that. But for most people, what's really the big deal, particularly, we don't live in the hottest country. This has been a year where everybody's wanted to leave and go somewhere hot, and that's been not so easy to do. But it does matter, and it does matter for us too. It's one thing we can think about, for example, let's say on a nice day like today, late summer, early autumn, it's actually quite cool and nice outside. But if you're driving down, say, the M5, you've been driving, the sun's beating through the window for a couple of hours, you do notice your back gets sweaty, your bottom gets sweaty. And often by the time you get to the motorway services, you're really quite glad to get up and walk around. And it's important for us to remember, for our clients who use mobility systems where they require a lot of support, that's not an option for them. And it's not only not an option on one motorway trip, it's day in, day out. So heat is building up every day against all the places they're contacting the seat. And we've got a picture here, quite typical for the current weather, actually. Lots of air getting in on the sides, but by nature, most seating is insulating. Often it has an element of foam or neoprene or even air, air cushions. Something has to hold the air. So they're against an insulator. And in fact, air itself is quite an insulator. That's actually part of how igloos, even though they're made of snow, keep things warm inside and cold outside, because the snow traps lots of air. So we are putting our clients, because we have to, in systems that will get hot against the skin surface. It's great for the clients in a lot of ways. It means that if they've got, for example, a postural chair, they can be comfortable and be out of bed and eat or participate in family activities or activities in the care sort of environment. And for this young man, for example, he's off on a day out. But inherently, sitting on a surface for a long time has risks. And so to just put this in context, when we look at really what causes skin breakdown, it boils down to four things, and they're all affected by mobility. So just very quickly in the chat, and I may, see, this is the thing where I may see if I can see the chat window. It's a little tricky to do in the slide setting, but I want to see if people can try and tell me what, other than microclimate, are the two big factors that contribute to skin breakdown. And I know some of you will know because I saw some of the names that have come along today. What else are if you had to think of the four main factors that contribute to skin breakdown other than microclimate, what would they be? And if you could just put your answers in the chat. I know you're on mute at the moment. And I might ask Tristan, are you getting answers in the chat? Sorry, we said about looking at the chat, but I can't actually, I don't have that menu option to bring the chat up and present with you.
Yeah, no, there's lots coming through. Majority are pressure, shear, friction.
Well done, you've done it. You don't even have to read anymore. Top 3. Done and dusted. I knew I didn't need to tell you. You'd already know. Exactly. You've answered my question for me. That's what causes breakdown. Pressure, heat, friction, shear, moisture. And for those of you that might be a little bit newer to this field, friction and shear, you'll almost always hear them together, because if you have one, you have the other. But just so you're aware, shear is what happens inside to the tissues when you're sliding. So of course you have your pelvis, and then if you're sliding, there's going to be a pulling and that kind of a force on the inside on tissues, and then on the bottom, on the outside surface, that's technically friction, but it's all about sliding and those forces. And then pressure, of course, the most popular one, particularly small areas with a lot of pressure. The more pressure is distributed, the better it is. And then heat and moisture, which often one leads to the other, because obviously when we get hot, we get sweaty. So let's look at that in just a little bit more depth. This is a classic study, but it's still cited because it's such a classic. And it involved some rather unlucky pigs, actually. Pig skin is very similar, as it turns out, to human skin. If any of you know some tattoo artists, it's not unusual that tattoo artists will practice on cadaveric or the pig skin of a pig who is no longer with us to practice their craft, because of the similarities with humans. So under anesthesia, these poor pigs, who were perfectly healthy before, had 2-inch or 51mm discs placed on different parts of their skin for 5 hours. So hopefully our clients under this level of pressure for that long, 5 hours, each of these very small areas, 2 inches, was put under 100mm of mercury. To put that in context, most pressure maps measure to 50. So twice what most people set their pressure mapping at, although you can set your pressure mapping to different things. So a lot of pressure over a tiny area for 5 hours, so almost guaranteeing problems. Amazingly, and I'll go through this, I know it's a lot in that quote, for the control, the disc that was only pressure wasn't heated at all, there was no damage. It kind of shows the, the amazing abilities of biology when you start with healthy skin and a healthy individual, an animal in this case, quite, how much we can stand. At 25 degrees, so that's uncomfortably warm, probably, if you're in a room, or it is for me, but it would be very warm, as a room temperature. There was some, it was okay. They said superficial, or, but no deep tissue problems. At 35 degrees, and of course, 35 degrees is still under body temperature. It hasn't hit body temperature yet. The damage, here the quote says only deep tissue damage. I would say that's deep tissue damage. It's a worry. It's not an only. There started being problems. And then at 45, you can see here, at 45 degrees, the extent of necrosis was the greatest. And necrosis, of course, is a term that means death. That tissue is dead and it will never come back. And that is what happens to our clients when they have a grade 3, even a grade 2 pressure sore, and tissue dies. What was lost may come back as scar tissue, but they'll never have the healthy tissue they did before. I know for some of you, I'm telling you stuff that's a huge review, but I like to underline that, because almost, I think when we work in seating and wheelchairs and postural supports, we almost get a little bit used to hearing about, grade 2, grade 1, and it doesn't sound like a serious thing, but it shows that the effect of temperature is significant. And this is the effect of temperatures that most of our clients would be under if they're sitting in a chair very long. The other way I want to kind of tie in what's happening with microclimate and why that kind of matters is what's happening because the skin is wet, because obviously if you get hot, you will get sweaty. And some of our clients also have moist skin because of things like incontinence. And there was a study done, this was actually a Japanese study, the first one, and they specifically looked at the rate of heat conduction in dry skin versus moist skin. And it turns out when the skin is wet, heat transfers more quickly through to the underlying tissues. sometimes that's a good thing, certainly for the physios here, but also some of the other professionals here. If you want a warm heat, moist heat pack to treat an injury, sometimes that's nice. You've got a sports injury or whatever. But for somebody that's at risk of tissue damage because they've also got pressure, they also maybe have shear because they have tone or other issues, or they're sliding, this is starting to be a worry. Not only is the skin hot, and there's all the problems for it being hot, now it's wet, and now that is increasing how quickly the heat will get to underlying tissues. Another one that was particularly interesting, this is, and it was quite a global look because research all around the world. This study looked at recently injured people with spinal cord injuries in hospital compared to other people in hospital that had unrelated injuries, like they were getting a knee surgery or something. And people who had even quite recent spinal cord injuries already had less blood flow to the areas loaded and sitting. This particular study was looking more at the sacrum, and because they were like in bed quite a lot, and that's where they could put sensors. But it means that if the blood flow is impeded, there's less ability to carry the heat out. So now we've got these clients who have to sit because they have to be, you know, active in their lives. So they're going to have heat, and when the skin is wet, the heat is going through more quickly. And in at least spinal cord injury and also other neurological injuries, it means that they can't get rid of the heat. So it's just showing that it might be a bigger problem than, certainly I used to think, you know, I used to kind of not actually pay that much attention unless the client was complaining about being hot. And the sort of last group to maybe just consider in your clinical judgment and assessment is that elderly clients have more difficulty regulating their body temperature generally. And this one particular study concluded that that could be associated with higher risk of decubitous ulcers. And that kind of stands to logic, doesn't it? Certainly anybody over 25 in the room will know that when you have injuries, they take a little bit longer to heal. Things don't spring back quite as well as we'd like. And certainly with the elderly clients, that makes a big difference. So in other words, if we look at the big four, you know, because there's a lot to think about in an assessment always, the people who really are at most risk for heat and moisture buildup are going to be those people who sit or lie for 3+ hours and struggle to reposition themselves. I mean, we all sit, you know, we all lie more than 3 hours at night when we go to bed, but struggle to move around. They have neurological conditions such as spinal cord injury or something like MS or MND or some other condition where that may affect actually blood flow and things like that. Even though it's a neurological condition, it may, particularly if it's an injury, traumatic brain injury, it may also impede blood flow. Older clients, and then I put down there as the last one, people who have other skin risk factors, and I put that in there, even though I'm sure we would think about it. But when heat and moisture are present, in a way, they're a little bit like throwing petrol on a fire. Somebody's already at risk, and when there's heat and moisture present, it tends to increase the rate at which problems happen. So you've been very patient. You've been listening to me for quite a while. What I'm going to do is something for you to do for a minute. I've got 2 columns here, and we're going to think about what are risk factors for skin breakdown, and I'm sure you've got lots of answers. I'm going to set a timer. She said, opening her phone to set a timer. Just for a minute. Just before we get into it, intrinsic is just anything within your body, anything to do with you as an individual. Extrinsic, obviously anything to do with your environment. And don't put it in the chat. I just want you to get a scrap piece of paper, a pen, get a pen at the ready. Any color will do, any piece of paper. And I want you to write as many as you possibly can. The more specific, the better, factors that might contribute to skin risk. Are we up for it? I hope so. Poor you, you're muted, so you may be protesting and I'm blissfully unaware. Okay, ready, steady, go. You've probably already started. This is where it'd be nice to have some music. Should record it next time I call the NHS. Something from Countdown. I haven't quite managed to put that into this yet, which would be really good. So we're at 20 seconds. Just a little bit longer at the halfway mark. Okay, and just 15 more seconds, we'll wrap it up. See who can get the most. Right, that's it. Pencils down. We'll see if anybody did this, hopefully. Did anybody make it to 20? And I'll have to rely on George to see the chat, because it is true, once I'm in presenter view, I can't see the chat really. It looks very quiet. I see his face. This is a face.
We're not getting any responses for 20.
Okay.
One every 3 seconds. It's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be. I would probably struggle, but you never know. Nobody's hit 20 yet, but I have to ask. Has anybody hit 10?
Oh, 11 for both.
Oh,
Kim Noble and
nice.
Somebody else has hit 10. Did you want to ask them to unmute or?
No.
No, just.
Yeah, because everybody will talk at once, but just put in the chat some of the reasons.
Great. So we've got 3 who got 10 or more.
Nice one. Okay, good. I knew this would be a good group. Okay, we might have to, because it's such a large group. I think we have just nigh on 100 people here. If you've got one you think might be the sort that somebody doesn't think about, go ahead and throw it in the chat. We'll see what comes up. Any surprising you there, George?
Yeah, nothing coming yet. I think they're all typing
Everybody's
away.
Just waiting. Okay, I will let people off the hook only because it's such a big group. But one day, if I see you in person, you won't get it so easily.
Here we go. We've got quite a few coming through. History of existing pressure damage.
Cool.
Temperature, malnutrition.
That's a really good one. Thank you, whoever put that.
Smoking. Just picking out a few here. Apologies if I don't pick yours. Yeah. Predisposition to skin damage, diabetes. Yes. Diet, impaired sensation. Yep, there's a lot coming through.
Yeah, and I'm glad people said about impaired sensation as well. And some diagnoses, certainly some that come on slowly, people may not realize how impaired it is. Okay, great. Sounds like really, really good answers. Thank you, everybody who participated in that. So I'll just throw up, these were some that have been recognized in a few studies. One study, and I apologize, I don't have the source top of mind, but found over 100. So I'll just pick out some of the more weird ones, because when somebody has, not weird, but maybe not the ones that we think of first, because when people have these other risk factors, heat and moisture are even bigger of an issue. One, I think that certainly when I've done sessions before, it's not the first one to come up, is smoking. And that's not a value judgment, that is objective. We all have our vices. But if you smoke, it's terrible for your entire body. Obviously, it's not good for your cardiac system, cardiovascular system, and it's not good for skin. For those of you who've had surgery, any kind of an operation, you'll be asked to quit smoking if you can 6 weeks ahead. And that's because it makes that big of a difference to how you'll heal from surgery. So if you have a client that's waiting out front, he's having a fag, he's got yellowed fingers, the clothes smell of smoke, already you should be thinking there's at least moderate risk, maybe high here for this client, even if everything else is pretty good. I think people have already said a lot of these. Of nutrition, thank you for that. Hydration, of course, we have clients that may find going to the loo difficult, so then they don't drink as much, and then their skin isn't as healthy. That actually increases, a risk. Another thing I just want to point out, I think a lot of you will have said, but maybe some of you might not have, is cognitive impairment. And that can also be a psychological motivation sort of impairment to do all the things that we know we're supposed to do. All of us don't do quite what we should for our health, and that's for our clients as well. So just a friendly reminder to please consider all these and more when you're considering risk. So because this is just a whistle-stop tour about skin health and microclimate, I wanted to highlight for you, there are a couple of articles you can go and read. These links are also in the PDF that you'll get following this, the notes. And this is some further reading on the Sunrise Medical site. We have some blogs and resources just for prescribers like yourselves. And these are actually two articles there were two that I wrote, but they're easy to get through. They're not heavy reading, they're like 5 minutes each. And they do go a little bit more into skin and microclimate, and they also talk about some further resources. So just wanted to point those out, and certainly please feel free to have a look at those sometime. Right, so let's get to, well, what do we do about it? And poor George, he's going to have to look at the chat again, because I'm going to ask, what are people doing now as far as they can to manage heat and moisture at the skin surface? I know it takes a moment to type things and people have to think.
Barrier creams is the first one to
Good
come on.
one. Yes. And I'm glad that's I'm really glad somebody said that, because sometimes when we're in our silos of thinking as an ergonomics, seating person, then that may not be thought of, and it's super important. Thank you.
Repositioning or encouraging standing where possible.
Absolutely.
Focusing on prescribing more breathable materials, so spacer fabric. Airflow cushion mattresses, ventilation and specialist seating.
Yeah, I've done that. Where you sort of drill holes in the back. Yeah, I've done a bit of that. Great. Okay, we're definitely getting the main concept.
There's a lot coming through. Yeah,
that's great. To be honest, what's tricky is those are all the things we do. Thank you very much for those answers. What's tricky is there's kind of not a lot we can do. All of that represents us doing the best we can as healthcare professionals. But if somebody has to be on a surface, we're kind of limited. But those are the things, of course, try to get materials that encourage heat dissipation. For example, some materials, foam, it's great for lots of things. It's not so good for heat dissipation. And unfortunately, memory foam is some of the worst, visco foam. But it's one of the most comfortable often for clients, subjectively, and subjectively matters. And for clients that have joint problems or arthritis, it can reduce a bit of vibration. So there's always that balance with memory foam. Airflow, if we can. Number one way to increase airflow, of course, is to get off your skin. And obviously the factors related to increasing temperature levels, like get a fan and those sorts of things we all do when it gets hot. And how do we get there? Already mentioned weight shifting, repositioning, gold standard for every single factor, actually, for skin breakdown, pressure, shear, moisture, heat. The more you're not sat, the better it is. Getting off the surfaces that contribute. Yep. So yeah, sorry, and that's two different ways. And it makes sense, obviously. You sit forward in the car and you get your back off the seat, then some air can flow. You were already sweating, but then the sweat can evaporate, which is what causes the cooling. And then I put the third one on there. This is an exciting area. There's still not a lot out there, but we're starting to get a little bit of momentum on the market, in the marketplace on this. There are a few cooling technologies out there. There are some, well, you can get a back now that includes a fan, a wheel air back, that's out there. Obviously using spacer fabric. Spacer fabric, I'm going to be honest with you, which is interesting because I work for Sunrise, but the fact is spacer fabric is better than nothing, but it's not that good. Because what happens is we sit on it, don't we? And when we sit on it, we smash the fibers that were causing the airflow. What spacer fabric does help It's for people that can weight shift. When they come off, now they can get a little airflow. Whereas if it's a very hot, sweaty material, then even though they shift off, there's not really the airflow through. And it is a little bit, a little air does get through because people naturally shift around anyway, even people with disabilities who may have mobility problems. So spacer fabric helps, but when people get to a certain level of hot and sweaty, it's limited. Terry toweling's still out there. We've all had the clients that have quite an advanced pressure cushion, whether that's one of Sunrise's or somebody else, and they come in and there's a towel on the cushion, and you just kind of smooth out the wrinkles and look the other way, don't you? You know, you're not going to fight that battle. But it's understandable if you're sat on something that is designed to prevent moisture from going into the cushion material. Often that material doesn't allow the exchange of air and moisture. So it's kind of not surprising they put a towel on the top of it sometimes. So what I'm going to get to is one of the newest active cooling technologies. And I am going to talk just a little bit about what we have with Sunrise Medical and Jay. That's one you might want to consider as one of the options that you would put in your arsenal when you're looking at heat and moisture. And that's really the JAY Balance fluid cushion with cryo fluid. Has anybody used the JAY Balance? No, not Carl is shaking his head. I could see him. But maybe there might be some yeses in there.
We're getting one or two yeses on
one or two. Thanks, George. Yeah. So and some of what I'm going to say, I know I'm mentioning obviously the JAY Balance because I'm only able to talk about our product. I can't talk about other people's products. Whether I, and by the way, I'm just going to give you a bit of my background. Obviously, I work for Sunrise Medical, but before that, I've been an OT in total. I hate to say this, for 20 years. It makes me sound ancient. And 11 of those, before the 2 years I've been working for Sunrise, were with the NHS, leading the special seating in Bristol. So I've worked with lots of other products, and I have love for other products too, just so you know. But I'm going to talk about ours because that's the one I'm able to. So in the beginning, whether it was us or anybody else back in the day, and some of you might remember this chair. This chair was out even before I became an OT back in the 80s. I think this is one of the early quickies. The very first one was welded together out of bits of a hang glider in California. And back in that day, you'll notice there's no Jay cushion on there because Jay did not yet exist. And in fact, all the cushions were basically foam. There was foam, thick foam, thin foam, hard foam, soft foam. Not long after some dynamic like Roho type cushions came along, but that was it. There wasn't much else. And so Jay's been evolving ever since then. Jay started out as really the first one to bring a fluid pack in. So instead of sitting on foam, which is a lovely material, lots of good things about foam. I am not here to run down foam, but the thing about fluid is it immerses somebody without pushing back. Foam always pushes back a little bit. You can imagine there's so many little springs. So Jay came along and introduced fluid that people could immerse their pelvis into, and then has evolved over the years. The very first Jays were so far back that some of the early users were Vietnam veterans. So it's been a while, and that also, it started in California as well, but then it came under the Sunrise umbrella. But what happened actually with some of Jay is it was really good for high-risk clients, but it was sort of a pain to order. It was very much a DIY cushion, and the foam under, other than the fluid bit, because obviously it has foam where the fluid isn't, just felt very hard, particularly for people that had sensation. So clinicians said, right, we want something softer, easy to order, and also something that, if our clients do slide, they're not going to get into trouble. So you can see here on this picture, this is the pelvis. Some people will have a posterior pelvic tilt, despite the best position in the world. Some people you just have to accommodate, or they just will slide. But it meant they had soft foam to protect them against the firmer foam that's designed to load the thighs and to obviously take weight off of all the bony high risk ITs, coccyx, sacrum areas. Also, because the very earliest Jays, that sometimes the pelvic well could be too big or too small. That was redesigned to fit 95 of humans effectively. It was based on ergonomic data, so that there are only 3 pelvic sizes, because obviously if you gain a lot of weight, your pelvis doesn't change size. But people who are very tiny often do have smaller skeletons. So that was sized to match the size of the user more accurately. So that's where the JAY Balance, that was just very quickly a little background for those of you that might not be using it. It's kind of that Pareto principle cushion, if anybody's heard of the Pareto principle. It's also called the 80-20 principle. Sometimes you use 20% of the equipment for 80% of your clients. And it's that. It doesn't hit every client, but it's kind of, it hits 80% of high-risk clients where you're not quite sure what direction to go into, or you know they're high risk, but they may not realize yet that they're high risk. And that's what it's designed to do. It's got foam in it. You can order positioners or not. So it's simple with it comes with the most common positioners, comes with the air cushion at the back. Okay, great. So, and just to finish with the roundup of what the JAY Balance is, just for a little background, it's really for those clients that want something that feels subjectively comfortable. They need a little bit more stability maybe than a full air cushion sometimes, which can be great, a full dynamic air cushion, but obviously they feel quite unstable sometimes. Somebody who may have changing needs, so you can add positioners, take them out, etc. It comes with the option of a spacer cover as well. It is a higher skin risk. Also maybe somebody that you want air, but you want, just in case it all goes wrong, lots of care is involved and it completely deflates. They're not sat on a hard metal pan. There's still some foam under them, and there's still foam loading the thighs. And then also people with sliding or shear concerns. I actually got that from some therapists in Northern Ireland. They've said they get the stretchy cover, and then clients who'd had shear problems on other cushions, they really sink into the fluid. And obviously because the fluid is quite a dynamic surface, it protects the skin for clients that slide around, and they are quite stable because they sunk down into the cushion. Okay. And then though, we realized at Sunrise, great, JAY Balance, it's very popular. Lots of people are using it either in easy chairs, postural chairs, or sometimes using it in molded seating where there's a molded back, and then using a JAY Balance for somebody that doesn't want something too restricted for their cushion, and obviously in wheelchairs. But we needed to update it. And so we went back to this classic diagram of the main risk factors, and we asked how we're doing on each one, and we thought, well, it's quite good on pressure actually. Fluid is extremely high risk. We also have an air option. Really good on friction and shear. Some people get the balance for friction and shear, particularly with the stretch lycra cover. And then we had some real talk. We didn't get top marks on heat and moisture, but quite frankly, nobody really did. There just wasn't that much out there. And I might ask then, well, I think actually I won't, because it'll be kind of hard to manage with so many people, but kind of looking at what people said before, you know, people already using barrier creams, already using spacer, and we had spacer, you know, the JAY Balance comes with a very nice thick spacer, but, you know, could we do more? It's not actively cooling, and nor was anybody else's really out there. There's some that try to have, you know, a little bit of a cooling technology, but it just wasn't really holding over the long term. So we thought, right, let's look at this specifically. And so we came up with a cushion with some active cooling technology. So just going to show you a little video of that one with an American voiceover who will do it better than I will. So we'll just show you that very quickly.
Most people are not aware of this, but pressure injuries affect 95% of all spinal cord injury wheelchair users within their lifetime. 95%. A variety of factors can cause these injuries, but from a cushion perspective, there are 4 main culprits: pressure, shear, temperature, and moisture. Over the years, manufacturers have learned how to handle the first 2 by using air, fluid, and memory foam to reduce peak pressures and minimize the effects of shearing. However, the last 2, temperature and moisture, have remained elusive. The standard approach to this problem is to use a cover material that passively wicks moisture and heat away from the body. Unfortunately, this approach is limited in its ability to fully cool the skin over a prolonged period of time. Introducing JAY Balance with Cryo Fluid Technology, a revolutionary way to manage temperature and moisture. Inside each cryo fluid insert are millions of microbeads filled with paraffin wax. As heat from the user moves into this fluid, it's absorbed by the microbeads and the wax inside actively starts to melt. The fluid is also filled with graphite to disperse the heat throughout the fluid. The cryo fluid draws heat away from the user until the wax inside each microbead is completely melted. This active cooling process can last up to 8 hours. During this time, the user's skin surface is cooled to a therapeutic temperature range. Compared to foam, fluid, and air cushions, the active cooling process of the cryo fluid is striking. The new JAY Balance with cryo fluid technology supports studies which have found that cooling the skin from 97 to 82 degrees, 36 to 28 degrees Celsius, is estimated to be equivalent to reducing interface pressure by 29%. The cryo fluid microbeads reset back to their original state when offloaded every time. Cryo fluid combines active temperature and moisture management with the pressure and shear relieving benefits you know and love from JAY.
Okay, so this is probably just about, I'm just wrapping up about the JAY Balance Cryo here because, you know, it's not just about the JAY Balance, it's about how managing microclimate any kind of way you can. But I just wanted to emphasize, we did benchmark it, and this is in your PDF you'll get later too, against some other options, which included foam, and that was a cushion that is advertised to have a cooling cover. Was the foam cushion that was used. Fluid was our own JAY Balance. We weren't afraid to look at ourselves. Air cushion, which was a very well-known dynamic air cushion, which you can probably guess. And then the cryo fluid. And you can see really it's at the 3-hour mark that temperatures are really, maybe even a little before, they're really starting to rise on some of these other cushions, maybe even a bit before, 2 hours even. So, oops, excuse me. Why that matters is it's really for people that are going to use a cushion for those longer periods of time. And this is the last kind of couple of studies I'm going to bring in, or actually the last study with 2 quotes from it. We all probably have suspected when we chat to our clients that much like ourselves, we like to give a report of ourselves in the best light. And obviously when clients are talking to healthcare professionals, you know, they are trying to do the right thing, but they may bend the rules a little bit for what they, you know, feel they're supposed to do, like all of us do. Many of us don't eat 5, you know, fruits and vegetables a day or exercise every day, etc. And so there was a study that looked at how much are the clients bending the rules, and most of them are. And in fact, the recommendation that clients get that is stretched, shall we say, the most was how long they should spend in their wheelchair. This was focused on spinal cord injury because that's a very common group that can get funding, but that would be true of anybody that is using equipment. They tell us it's 2 hours, it might be more like 4. So obviously it's a bit of judgment, but just be aware that sometimes people may underestimate the true amount that they are in. So just in kind of summary, the people who you would consider the JAY Balance Cryo for, really anybody who uses a wheelchair regularly for 2 or 3 hours or more. Obviously, the people who you know have problems with heat. Or actually, I've had some clients that had generalized discomfort and weren't quite sure why. We could never quite put our finger on it, and then they were a lot happier on the JAY Balance Cryo. And then MS, multiple sclerosis, gets a special mention because that is a condition specifically that worsens with heat, and the clients have worse neurological function, obviously, when heat is worse. So that is particularly a group to consider. Like anything, there's a downside, wouldn't be dishonest. It may feel a little cooler. We're doing some post-market surveillance now to see, does it really feel cooler? But if, you know, they come into your clinic, it's July, they're wearing 2 jumpers and a scarf, you know, they might not be the client to have it. Or they want an ultralight cushion. It does add 100 grams to the weight. Sorry, 600 grams to the weight. So that's worth knowing about. So, and if you're familiar with the balance, it's all the same balance options. It's only on the order form you pick the cryo fluid. It's not a separate order form for cryo. Same order form, just pick the cryo fluid. And because it's new, we're not introducing all the sizes. For the 80-20 cushion, we've introduced the most common sizes, the 80% of sizes, which are 40 centimeters and wider. You can get that yellow strip that's not available with a modification request with an underfill. So contact us if you have somebody who is smaller you really want to do, but it's standard on the order form for 40 plus. And then just to compare it against the regular JAY Balance, obviously goes quite a big range from 34 to 60 wide, so quite big. Weight limit, actually it's 150, but in the two biggest sizes goes to 225. We've got ubiquity inserts and the positioning kit, which is the abductors, adductors, and lateral pelvic supports or not, but it is a little bit heavier. And for the balance, the cryo fluid, it is 50 quid more. So it's just a little more, so you know about that. And to finish off my bit and to leave some time for questions at the end, I just wanted to draw your attention to a new part of the Sunrise Medical site. It's in development, so it's not quite as slick as I certainly would like it to be yet, but it's on its way. We have a section that's just for clinicians, prescribers such as yourself, where we've got blogs, we've got some resources up, and one of the resources in your pack is from the resources section of Education in Motion. To get there, just go to the Sunrise Medical site. At the top, you can pick a few options: manual, power, and it's Education in Motion. And this is, for example, one of the resources, and this is one that's in your pack, where it talks about cushion properties generally. Obviously, we used our own cushions as examples because we, are going to do that. But this resource is good even if you don't buy any Sunrise Medical products. It talks about foam generally, and when you use that application, fluid generally, gel, polymers, and when you might use those. So it's we've got some really interesting resources, and I'd encourage you to get whatever free resources you can, because I know how it is. You're busy, hardworking people, and it's just so you can serve the clients like we all do. So with that, any questions?
Thank you very much, Faith. As they're coming in, I have one or two myself, if that's all right, just to kick it off. What's your honest opinion with the Dartex type of material? So, we often say it's waterproof, it's breathable, but like you mentioned before, we've particularly noticed with MS patients that there is those sweat patches, sweat marks, where the bottom has been and where the back's been. I don't really sort of feel it's often, is it the best thing? What would you say on
that? I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I like Dartex. I've used a lot of Dartex in my time and will continue to. And in fact, the JAY Balance, the inner cover is a 4-way stretch Dartex. But if you want it to really be trying to control microclimate, you do need a thicker spacer over top. What Dartex is great at is moisture control. One day, probably stupidly, actually, in a STEPS course, I was feeling brave and I was talking about how moisture resistant it is. And I poured some water in a cushion and left it for 3 hours. And as I was teaching, I thought, oh, wow, this could go wrong if it all soaks through. Luckily, it worked out fine. And it stayed a bead there to the end of the day. But like you say, if you're then sitting on that, because the point is to not let moisture through, then the moisture is with you. So I think it's a great material, and particularly it's good in that it controls moisture and it has stretch as well. So you can get positioners in there and people can sink into the foam or the fluid or the gel or the whatever. But it's not great for moisture control. And so if that's a worry, that's where people look at other materials on top.
Yeah, I think that's
some kind of active cooling like the cryo.
That's really helpful. It's basically, you keep the Dartex, but you wrap it with something like a cooling material, because we have used a few times Panvel Stretch, so the Panaz range, but it's not got the same stretch properties as Dartex, so you don't really get the same pressure relieving qualities, from that for the MS patients. Good. Well, there's a few questions coming in. What would you suggest to do for those working at home, sitting in the chair for long periods, or even clinical staff in the office?
Yes, Femi, thank you. I feel your pain, quite frankly, on that. Doing this master's degree, I thought I sat a lot to work before. Ha! Amateur. And in fact, she said, I'm sitting on a J Union now with spacer cover, and it made a difference. I had a J Easy Visco because I like it. That's a great cushion if you are, you know, you're the missing link with the dinosaurs and you have quite a prominent tailbone. That's a comfortable cushion. But it's not a Dartex, but it was moisture resistant. And I was getting quite a sweaty bum, you know, as somebody who can move around. It just wasn't that comfortable. And so I've gone to a cushion that has the thick spacer cover, and it's made a big difference. I will say though, sitting, unfortunately as humans, we're not designed to sit all day, are we? So the more we can get up, just like we tell our clients, we're humans, they're humans, the better. The more we can get up and have little walks, that is what our body is made for. And it's good for everything. It's good for circulation, it's good for pressure, it's good for microclimate too. And spacer helps. I haven't tried sitting on a JAY Balance Cryo. The height didn't work, but I should.
Great, so we got one here. I don't work with clients who need specialist seating, but in mental health, where we have clients with extreme low motivation who at times don't attend to personal hygiene needs. We haven't had any skin integrity issues as yet, but it is very much on my radar. Is there anything you would recommend as prevention?
Oh, well done. I can't see the chat now, but whoever said that, thank you. And well done you to recognize that as a risk factor, because it certainly is. And in fact, particularly then if that's combined with people who also have mobility problems, it can be very dangerous. And I had a client who developed an extremely serious sore because already had a spinal cord injury and then severe depression and was in one place, and it went very wrong. And it's really the same concepts as for everybody. Are these clients, and I don't know if we're able to find out, is it primarily mental health, or is it mixed with physical disabilities as well? Do we know? We might not know from the chat, but it's the same principles. The more people can get up, the better. And I think you're well down the road that you've recognized primarily mental health. Okay, thank you. Oh, that did come up. Oh, there's a chance to click on chat. Oh, I could see it. I'm so excited. It wouldn't give me that option to click earlier, but briefly it's come and I've jumped on it. Ah, lovely. Yes, thank you. That was Amy. Yeah, so that's in your favor, because as we saw with the pigs, that's what kind of shocked me. Well, a lot shocked me about that study, if I'm honest. But they had 100 millimeters of mercury over 2 tiny inches for 5 hours. I mean, they were basically stabbed. And only when it was heated up did they still develop pressure sores. So it just kind of shows the sort of magic that biology is, and why we can get away with such bad behavior, really. It gets us out of a lot of trouble, but there's a limit, you know, and our clients that are sitting day after day after day, they're pushing their luck. So yeah, so thank you, Amy. I guess, sorry, I'm talking after, but I get very excited about things. Just the fact that you're considering it a high risk, and if you do have a few clients that really are sitting for longer periods, you might consider a higher risk cushion, you know, like whether it's a JAY Balance or something else. Oh, that John has said, I find smartwatch app to remind to stand as useful. Thanks for that. I like how people are helping each other. That's good in the chat. Cool. Yeah, it's a bit like, yeah, the Fitbit and all the rest of it. I've always said, because I like to jump up, I need a sit bit. You know, I'm really proud of myself for sitting for a whole hour. And I do that actually. A time, no getting up. Right. Any other questions? Oh yeah, you're quite welcome, Amy.
Apologies if I've
No, that's fine. I'm so excited.
Missed any
people are saying some nice things. That's lovely. Thank you for people who have said thanks and some nice things. I appreciate that. You've been a really lovely group as well. I appreciate the participation. There's nothing worse than asking things to the void all by yourself.
No, it's been fun. We've had a lot of interaction there, Faith. Appreciate that. I'll keep going, and then just 1 or 2 more slides, and if I see some more questions pop in, we'll bounce back to them. So I think just to wrap it up, as Faith has said, on the Sunrise section of their site, they've got some really good resources. Likewise, we have on our own Yorkshire Care site, which really encourage you to take a dip in there. So we've got a seating ebook, lots of useful things about seating, I think 80 or 90 pages worth, and then templates, so for helping writing your justifications, prescription forms, lots of training videos. So just really encourage you to jump on there. It's free. Help yourself. It's all about helping and learning from each other. I've learned a lot today. That was very helpful. And I think really just summing it up, so take something like the Balance Cryo cushion. It can be so easily incorporated into really any types of seating that you're looking at. So as Faith touched on, the specialist electric wheelchairs, specialist manual wheelchairs. So you like your tilting space chairs, even your standard wheelchairs, or then rise and recline chairs or care chairs. These specialist cushions can quite easily be incorporated these days into other specialist products, and it makes a tremendous difference to somebody's comfort and their skin condition. So we will send out all the slides and recording of the webinar later on today. I just have a quick flick through. I think there's lots of thank yous coming over. Well, thank you for your time, everybody. And if there's any other questions that we've not picked up on, failed to ask, there'll be a feedback form. Just pop them in there, and either Faith or I will come back to you. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day, whatever you get up to. Bye.